Good morning, everyone. I am Merrill, and as representative of the students, faculty, and staff here at Williston Central School, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to serve as moderator of the 2022 Williston Central School Candidate Forum. On behalf of our principals, Greg Marino and Jackie Parks, the Humanities Committee, and the 7th and 8th grade students of Williston, we gratefully welcome all of the candidates who have volunteered time from their personal lives, their busy campaigns, and their positions of public service to be with us here today. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished guests by showing our appreciation with a resounding round of applause. It is our established tradition that we begin our candidate forum with the Pledge of Allegiance. To lead us in this patriotic ceremony, 2 students have been selected from the ranks of this year's Williston Central School upper houses. Bearing the flag of the United States of America is Ed, and he will be joined by Pledge Leader Grayson. Would you all please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're done.
Thank you very much. And now it is time to begin our candidate forum. The forum will consist of 3 rounds of questions presented by selected students from the 3 upper houses of Williston Central School. Answers from the candidates will be limited to 1.5 minutes each. Our dedicated timekeepers, Emery and Brendan, will be responsible for keeping the candidates within the time limits. All questions have been prepared by the students in the 7th and 8th grades. In the 4th round, each candidate will be given the opportunity to outline their personal goals for the position that they seek and present their vision for a prosperous and peaceful world for the students seated before them. The time limit for the final round will be announced at the end of round 3. To begin our forum, we ask that each candidate, starting with the candidate to my right, introduce themselves and indicate which office they seek.
I'm Peter Welch, and delighted to be here, and I'm running for the United States Senate.
My name is State Senator Joe Benning. I am running for the office of Lieutenant Governor. It's great to see you all here. I hope we have a wonderful time here today. Thanks for joining.
My name is Brenda Siegel, and I'm running for governor, and I often teach civic education in schools, and so I am so excited to see you all engaging this way. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. I'm David Zuckerman, former state representative, state senator, and lieutenant governor, and I'm running for lieutenant governor. It's great to see you. Thank you.
My name is Michael Taglavia. I'm running for Attorney General. I'm very thankful to be invited. I'm glad to see all the students here. I just want to relay a quick story. And hello to Mr. Katz, if you're out there. My band teacher. He was one of the people who was most involved with us, trying to keep us involved with civics. He took us to Washington, D.C. on more than one occasion. And I've thought of him a lot over these past couple of days because of this invitation. And thank you to all the teachers for keeping you students involved.
Good morning. I'm State Senator Becca Balint. I'm also the President Pro Tem of the Vermont Senate and the Democratic nominee for the U.S. House of Representatives. And I feel like I'm coming back to my roots today. I taught 7th and 8th grade social studies for many years, and I'm very excited to be here.
Good morning. My name is Gerald Malloy, and I am running for the United States Senate. And I want to thank you for having me here. It is a great day to be a Vermonter and a great day to be American. Thank you.
I am Charity Clark. I'm running for Attorney General, and I am a resident of Williston, so it's great to be here.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Phil Scott. I'm running for governor, and it really is great to be back here in Williston. This is one of my favorite events. I've been here many times before, and look forward to all your questions today and all the answers from the candidates. So thanks very much for having us.
All right, we are going to begin our forum. The first question in round one will be presented by Thor for Phil Scott. Candidates will have a minute and a half to answer. We are also going to give Governor Scott an extra 90 seconds following his first question to address his students now, as he has another engagement he must attend. And we just thank the governor right now for fitting us into his schedule today. Governor, you have 90 seconds once the question's asked. Thanks.
Hello, Governor Scott. This is a question for you. More and more young people are starting the path to substance abuse. Many kids are using drugs like nicotine and tobacco vapes, and in many cases, kids are using marijuana. How do you plan to stop younger kids from using nicotine, tobacco, and marijuana?
Well, thanks very much for the question. And this is something that has haunted us for decades, and it's not getting any better, it doesn't seem. I reflect on when I was 12 or 13. I think a lot of it's peer pressure as well. I was 12 or 13 at the time. I remember attending an event. A lot of older kids were at this bonfire, and I was thrilled to be there as someone that was 12 or 13. And I remember because that was the first opportunity I had. Somebody had cigarettes there, and somebody offered me a cigarette, and I wanted to be one of them. So I almost took that cigarette, started to smoke it, but my brother came along, my older brother, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be one of the team here. I'm going to be one of the kids. They're all smoking. I want to be like them." And he said, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." And he said, "You should stay. You're not going to do this because this will start something you can't stop." And he was so right. It was the only time I ever listened to my older brother, by the way. But he was right. And I didn't smoke that night, and I haven't smoked a cigarette in my entire life since, probably because of that experience. But we have to work together on this. We have to listen to all of you to prevent you from, you already know what the effects are of smoking and vaping and marijuana. The edibles are something that are very, very, I'm very concerned about as well. So I know that's the end of my time, but this is going to be something that we are going to have to work together on to make sure that we prevent you from heading down that road.
We're going to give the governor another minute and a half to address the students right now with his vision for the world and Vermont. Thanks.
Well, again, thank you all for having me, and I'm sorry I have to leave. I had another obligation at the State House, and it's an awards ceremony for the Vermont State Police, and it's something that I attend every single year and have done so for the last 10 or 15 years. So I apologize for that. If there's one thing you take away from today, this is democracy in action. We have all kinds, I doubt any of us agree 100% with one another. And you're going to hear all kinds of different opinions. But what you're also going to see, I hope you're going to see, is respect and civility. Because what we're seeing across the country, across the globe, is more and more polarization. It's about which team you're on rather than what team you should be a part of. I believe we should be a part of Team America, Team Vermont, and we want what's best for you. We all have, again, different ideas on how to accomplish that, but if you don't treat each other with respect and civility and listen, really listen to one another, and be willing to change your opinion along the way, because we don't have all the answers individually. But collectively, we know this democracy works, but we have to work together. So again, it starts with you, and we have to continue that and we have to show that we're adults too. So thank you again for having us.
Thank you, Governor. The next question in round one is going to go to Charity Clark, and the student asking the question is Maya.
As of 2020, 70% of bias-motivated hate crimes were related to race and ethnicity. If elected, what is your plan to control and resolve these racial-motivated crimes?
First of all, thanks so much for having this forum. It's wonderful to be here, and not surprisingly, since here I am running for Attorney General, when I was your age, I was really into politics and journalism and government, and I'm so excited to see you all engaged like this. This issue is, I think, important to all of us and should be important to all of us. We want to live in a Vermont where people are treated respectfully and equally, and with love and care and neighborliness. And it's really important that we work together to solve issues like hate crimes and racial motivated incidences. Here's what we can do in the Attorney General's office. We have 2 units that relate to this work. The first is the criminal unit, and the second is the civil rights unit. And those units work together when there's a hate crime. But I think it's really important to not just sit in our offices and do this work, but get out into the community to try to educate and engage in conversations with communities and inspire conversations with communities so that we are working together to raise awareness and understanding among each other. The other important role that the Attorney General plays is in advising the legislature, and as Attorney General, that's something that I will do with gusto. Our expertise in the Attorney General's office goes deep. It relates to crime, to constitutional law, and other things. So I will, of course, be in the legislature and working on this issue as well. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Sierra for Gerald Malloy.
Mr. Malloy, something important to me is the Pride community. Then I noticed that on your website there wasn't anything about the Pride community. What do you propose to support about the Pride youth suffering from discrimination?
Thank you, Sierra. Great question, and I guess to start off with, thank you again for having me here today. I met quite a few of you earlier this morning. I do have an 8th grader down in Weathersfield School, so it's great to see a bunch of great Vermonter 8th grade, 7th and 8th graders. So as a U.S. Senator, I look to get back to abiding by the Constitution, and from the Constitution before that, the promise was the Declaration of Independence, and it talks about unalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And that pursuit of happiness piece there, I believe in that 100%. People are free to pursue their happiness. So as a U.S. Senator, I would look to propose and only support any kind of laws that enable and support pursuit of happiness, nothing related to any kind of discrimination. You've seen maybe in the news a little bit about people having ideas to look back at other settled law like gay marriage and interracial marriage. I have no interest I fully support those, have no interest in overturning those. And I guess the last piece, you hear in the news a little bit about bullying. I can't stand bullying, so I'm not sure of the legislation there, but I would be a U.S. Senator that opposes that, and I will support equal opportunity rights across the board. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Olivia for Becca Ballant.
Hi. How is the new Green Deal going to provide Vermont with the funding that we need to create and sustain high-paying jobs while combating the climate crisis, fight environmental injustice, and make Vermont a clean energy economy? Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say climate change is real. We're going to start with that. And I live in the southern part of the state where we are experiencing quite an intense drought. And every time that we get a rainstorm, we see our agricultural fields affected, and downtown villages and low-lying areas getting inundated with water. And so we are seeing the effects right now. And as I travel across the state, I hear from a lot of Vermonters that they are quite anxious about how that's going to impact not just our way of life here in Vermont, but also our economy going forward. And I see this both as a legislator. I've done a lot of work here in the state Senate around climate action. We'll continue that work in the Congress. But I also see this through the lens of my own kids. I have a 12-year-old and almost 15-year-old. And they ask me often, are we still going to continue to have winter here in Vermont? And there is that sense of a real deep worry about the future. We need a federal investment in climate action that is commensurate with the level of challenge that we face. So it's not a problem that we can solve just in Vermont or just at the national level. We also need to look internationally. So we need to be working with partners across the globe to reduce our carbon emissions. We need to be investing in a workforce that can address the climate economy, and I will be a strong, strong partner in that. It is an existential crisis that we're all facing right now. Thank you for the question.
The next question will be presented by Zephyr for Michaela Taglavia.
Online safety is a concern for all internet users. We are very concerned about keeping children safe online. What do you see as possible solutions to keep kids safe online? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think the approach needs to be threefold. First, parents need to be involved. Your parents need to be involved with your online lives. I was once as smart as you when I was your age. Don't take it the wrong way, but. And your parents are the first line of defense, I believe. They need to be kept aware of what you're doing. The second prong on this is your teachers. Your teachers need to help show you that if someone online is trying to lure you into doing something they know is illegal, teachers can help coach you about keeping people from trying to get you to keep secrets from your parents and your teachers that they know are wrong, that they know are unlawful. So educating you by your parents and your teachers is the first thing. The last thing is when we know that there is some sort of online predator, that's where the Attorney General's office gets involved. The easy part would be if the online abuser or perpetrator is in this state or in this country. The difficult part is when there are issues coming from overseas. Most of the stuff, I think, with online abuse of kids is local. So I think that three-pronged approach would be very helpful in stopping online abuse of children.
The next question will be presented by Maddie for David Zuckerman.
As somebody who's starting my first job soon, I'm going to be paid minimum wage. As a child, since I have no bills to pay, minimum wage is great. But if an adult is being paid minimum wage, it's not easy to keep up with bills and inflation. My question is, how can you increase the minimum wage without raising inflation even more than it is?
Thank you, Maddie. That's a great question, and I want to answer it in a number of ways. First of all, there are many, many Vermonters. The majority of minimum wage workers are actually adult workers, not youth. And so they're trying to pay their bills on a minimum wage and are really struggling. And poverty is very real in Vermont, and that's one of the main reasons to raise the minimum wage, because unfortunately, too many people who are trying to raise families are also working on minimum wage. It's important to recognize that when we raised the minimum wage prior to this recent inflation scenario, it didn't cause a raise in inflation because most of the production costs are not labor. And so we can raise minimum wage and produce better economic circumstances for families because the cost of products will not go up as fast as raising the minimum wage. The current reason we have inflation is because of a supply shortage versus demand. And so there's not enough stuff out there for the people to buy, and so the prices go up. So if we have more people working, we can actually keep the price of goods from going up as fast. It's not driven by minimum wage. Minimum wage used to be much higher relative to the cost of goods back in the 60s and the 70s, and folks were better off, and prices until later in the 70s did not go up, and that was because of oil. The other reason to raise the minimum wage is to recognize that most jobs are now more productive, and workers aren't getting that pay. It's all going to the top. Thank you.
Liam Madden was unable to come today as an emergency, so we're going to move on. The next question will be presented by Emmeline for Brenda Siegel.
Hi. In an interview with Vermont Public, you said that you would prioritize helping the state meet its emission goals by 2030. How do you plan on doing that, and what would the expected cost be?
So I want to start by echoing what Senator Ballin, and also I'm very proud to say that Senator Ballin is my senator and has done incredible work on climate and will continue that in Congress, said, which is that climate change is real. We have to address increasing public transportation. I'm on the Public Transit Advisory Commission, and I've been able to have a front row seat on what we can do to expand public transportation and what we have not yet done. We also have to make sure that our solutions, such as heat pumps, electric vehicles, and solar panels, can reach our low and moderate income families, because most of our families in Vermont are low and moderate income. And then we have to support our small farms in transitioning to carbon sequestration and require our large farms to do the same. And the last thing is that our Public Utilities Commission is currently preventing us from building expansive in-state renewable energy, and we have to make sure that we can do that, because not only does that do really good work for our 2030 climate goals and our 2050 climate goals, but also it brings good green jobs to Vermont, which helps all of your futures. In terms of paying for it, sometimes we have to really do an assessment of what it costs to not do this. And this has been a very expensive problem for a long time, and so we'd actually save money by doing this work.
The next question will be presented by Avery for Joe Benning.
Hi.
Morning.
While researching on your website, I noticed that a goal you have is to bring down the cost of living in Vermont. How do you plan on accomplishing this?
Great question, Avery, and I'm going to begin with a little audience participation. Could I ask all of you to rise? Now, I know many of you don't have pockets, and some of you who do have pockets don't have any money in it, but let's pretend that you do. If you who have money in your pocket reach in there and look at whatever you've got in your pocket, I want you to think about this. That is your money. About 2/10 of a mile down the road from here is a graveyard, and a very big monument in that graveyard belongs to a man named Thomas Chittenden. When he got this state together, way back in 1777, those folks that organized this state had a very real dream for all of you. You have a right to earn the money that is in your pocket. The folks who are up here on the stage sometimes make decisions that cost you more from your pocket than you really should be paying. So in my little presentation here today, I'm hoping you will remember as you sit back down, this group of people up here should never be taking more from your pocket than is absolutely necessary to run government. This is your future. You want to make sure you pay close attention to what we up here are doing, because very soon now, you folks are going to have the baton handed to you. Great question. Thanks for listening.
Next question will be presented by Orion for Peter Welch.
Hello, Mr. Welch.
Hi.
I read that after you left college, you went to Chicago to work for a community organization fighting discrimination. My question for you is, how are you going to prevent discrimination and racism as a U.S. Senator? Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, I dropped out of college and went to Chicago. You know, every one of us is very sensitive to when we're not treated fairly, especially when you're younger. And when I was young, I experienced how my classmates were concerned about that. But I started seeing what was happening down south when the civil rights movement was beginning. And a black man or a black woman in the South couldn't vote. It was illegal for them to vote in many cases, or a person who wanted to vote for someone who would fight for strong schools had to go to the town clerk's office and count and say how many jelly beans were in a jar. And if they got it right, they might be able to vote. That was wrong. That was unfair. And I responded to that by going out to Chicago, working with folks who were fighting against legal discrimination. People couldn't buy a house if they were black. They couldn't get a mortgage. Now, just in your own very small way, when you are treated unfairly, think about what it means if you're a family trying to get housing, or you're trying to get a job, and you can't get it because of the color of your skin. So what I did is got involved then, and what I'll do if I'm in the U.S. Senate is stay involved to fight for fairness for everybody. Thank you.
That's the end of round one. The first question in round two is going to go is for Phil Scott, but he has a replacement. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tori Biondolo. I'm Governor Scott's campaign manager.
And your question is going to be presented by Maya.
I read on your website that one of your initiatives is to work towards making Vermont more affordable to live in. What specific action steps will you take if elected governor? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Maya. I'm not making any assumptions here, but I think I was most recently in your shoes on this stage, being 24. And I remember when I was your age, I had all these dreams. I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. That has changed since then. But one of the biggest things I remember is me and my friends always said, we're getting out of here. We're leaving Vermont. We want to go to a city. We want to find opportunity elsewhere. And one of the reasons why that is because we felt like there weren't the jobs that we needed here to support our big dreams, to have a lifelong career. And so one of the things that our administration is really focused on is easing regulations, making sure that our taxes are more favorable to low and small businesses and low and moderate income Vermonters, so we can attract more businesses here so that you all can fulfill your dreams here in Vermont and not have to look elsewhere. And we're starting to see the fruits of that labor and actively recruiting more businesses to come here, and we're seeing that with the expansion of Beta Technologies and other great businesses around the state that will be great opportunities for all of you in the future. But we need to make it more affordable to do business here so that you can stay here. And then on top of that, make it more affordable for you to live here. So we're investing record amounts in housing in the past 6 years that the governor has been governor, and also investing in childcare and other things you don't have to worry about right now, but someday when you're looking for a job or you're trying to find that opportunity, Vermont is the best place for you to call home where you can live, work, and raise a family. Thanks.
The next question will be presented by Thor for Charity Clark.
Hello, Charity. The crime rate has been increasing throughout our state. What do you see as the reason crime is going up? How would you use the Office of Attorney General to solve this problem?
Thank you for the question. We all deserve to be safe, to feel safe in our communities. And this has been a concern for me throughout the campaign. I called for a task force to be formed on gun violence back in August, and I'm glad to see that since that time, the governor has assembled a task force and made other steps toward trying to solve the problem that we have experienced. I believe that our pandemic that we have all been going through these past couple of years has had an incredible impact on all of us, on our mental health, and has also impacted the crime rate. We've all together been through a pretty traumatic experience, and some of us are dealing with it better than others. There are multiple people, I think, on this stage today who have made mental health a focus in their campaign, and there's a good reason why. It's incredibly important that folks have access to the services they need and that we destigmatize getting mental health help. One of the things that the Attorney General, I've mentioned this before, one of the things the Attorney General does is work with the legislature on problem solving and testifying and trying to work on resolving some of the problems that we have. That's something that I will do in January as Attorney General to work with the legislature addressing this and other issues. Thanks.
The next question will be presented by Orion for Gerald Malloy.
Hello, Mr. Malloy. We are interested in hearing more about your plans to reduce government spending while also keeping a strong defense and maintaining roads and bridges. How will you cut costs and keep these other important programs funded? Thank you.
Thank you, Orion. Great question. So, different parties, you have different outlooks about running the government, and mine is for less government, less control, less spending. And what we're seeing here is what I would say overspending. I do have quite a bit of government experience and military experience from West Point, the active duty Army, and serving in government organizations. I can tell you nothing is off the table because even in the military, I think there's room to make cuts, and I'm willing to make those tough decision cuts. I also, as was mentioned, with my business background, I will look to grow well-paying jobs here in Vermont. I think that's also been missing. But getting back to the overspending, that actually leads to inflation, and that's what we're all experiencing right now. So I will look to spend within budget, and that'll help our economy get back on track. Thank you.
Next question will be presented by Zephyr for Becker Ballant.
How will you advocate for the people without health insurance? Currently, there are over 19,000 Vermonters without health insurance.
Zephyr, thanks for the question. This is incredibly important to me. And it's not just the 19,000 Vermonters who have no health insurance. It's the thousands of Vermonters who are underinsured and who don't have enough coverage to really cover the cost even of their prescriptions each month. And so I just want to use myself as an example. Yesterday, I picked up my asthma medication from the pharmacy, or rather, a staffer did it for me because I was busy doing something else, but he picked it up. It was $253 for 1 month of my asthma medication to keep me breathing. Now, I'm fortunate enough that I can pay that each month to keep me alive. But right now, the cost of life-saving medications like insulin are climbing month by month, year by year, and it is not fair that in this incredibly wealthy country that we haven't figured out how to get health care coverage for everyone. There's no good reason why we can't have health care coverage for every single citizen. I'm a strong believer in Medicare for all. I will continue to fight for Medicare for all in Congress. And I just want to be really clear that it shouldn't come down to whether you have a good paying job for you to have health insurance. We need to take health insurance away from employment and make sure everyone, regardless of the job that they have or don't have, that they have health insurance and good coverage to keep them safe and healthy.
The next question will be presented by Olivia for Michael Taglavia.
Hello. What do you plan to do about the opioid crisis in Vermont and its impact on society? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Is this on? One of the first things I would try to do as Attorney General was try to get my plan implemented into the governor's 10-point plan. The big pharma settlements that are going to be coming to Vermont over the next 10 years amount to more than $100 million. I believe most of those funds should go back into fighting the crisis, the drug crisis, keeping drugs off the street, the ones we can't keep off the street, people who are addicted, getting them treatment, medically assisted treatment, reopening the Windsor facility, detention facility, and getting people who have been convicted of a drug crime. For instance, I don't know that this was a drug-related crime, but I had a woman at a forum last night bring up she was assaulted, 83 years old when she was assaulted. 3 years later, she still has not seen justice. Our criminal justice system is working too slowly, so we need to figure out how to make it justice denied. Justice delayed is justice denied. We need to make the process more efficient, but we also need to make sure that the people who have committed crimes because of their addiction, get the help that they need so that they can be trained and become productive members of society. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Avery for David Zuckerman.
Hello, Mr. Zuckerman. One of the most important issues is saving the planet. According to National Geographic, over the last 10 years, our climate has increased in heat by 1.34 degrees. I saw on your website that an important issue for you is renewable energy. I'm wondering if you are going to do anything about climate change, and how do you plan to make sure all Vermonters use renewable energy?
Thank you, Avery. Let me just state that not only renewable energy, but the climate crisis as a whole is truly the umbrella overarching issue for all of us. My daughter is 16. She's at CVU, where many of you will be going, I suspect, in the next handful of years. And I think about this every single day for her, for you, for all the other children and the grandchildren of folks in Vermont. What do the next 50 years look like? What are we going to do in our part that we can do to mitigate the climate crisis? Renewable energy is a big piece of that. Reducing our consumption of energy is a huge piece of that. That includes investing in weatherization. One of the things we really also have to do around renewable energy, which was a key part of the question, is make sure we make renewable energy more affordable for everyday people. So that includes state support for folks to be able to put renewable energy solar panels on their homes, or for larger scale solar energy to make it more affordable for our community and our grid as a whole. It is critical that we take every step we can across the board to tackle the climate crisis. We need to, as a small farmer, we put cover crops on our fields to pull carbon dioxide out of the air. Our plants, our fields are actually one of the best ways we can reduce the impact of the climate crisis. So we also have to invest in helping farms do more cover cropping and more carbon sequestration. So it's an all hands on deck across the board to tackle the climate crisis. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Sierra for Brenda Siegel.
On your website, you said that you are planning to strengthen Vermont's education system. What would that mean for teachers and students, and how do you plan on doing that?
So I'm going to start by saying that I've spent my life, I mentioned this in the beginning, teaching extracurricular activities and after-school programs, often in civic engagement, leadership, and social justice. And I know how hard our teachers work and how important it is to have schools that have strong infrastructure, and that they are that you are able to get the education and services that you need while you're in school. One really important piece of that is making sure that our teachers have security. In the last couple of years, the legislature worked very hard to create pensions, which is the teacher retirement fund, which is extremely important for their security. And they worked really hard and came up with a good compromise and moved forward. And that's something that we have to continue to do to keep supporting our teachers so that we have enough of them in the school. Probably in this school and in schools across the state, we've had a hard time finding teachers. And then for your programs, we need to make sure your schools have the facilities they need. There's some schools in Vermont, for example, in Burlington, people are going to high school in a mall right now. And we need to make sure that we are building so that those folks have what they need. Our schools are our future. You are our future. It is you that get to make the changes in the future for us, and so it's our job to make sure you have what you need going forward.
The next question will be presented by Maddie for Joe Benning.
I noticed that one of your important issues is personal responsibility. I think that is very important as well. But what exactly do you mean by personal responsibility?
Appreciate that question, Maddie. Next April marks the 40th year that I will have been a criminal defense attorney. And in that time period, I have represented about 4,115 people as of my last file opening. Every one of those people who is now involved in the criminal justice system has made a choice. Personal responsibility is that very thing that your teachers have been teaching you for years and your parents have been desperately trying to instill in you. Yes, you have the right to be free, to think, to speak, to act, and do. But when you make the wrong choice, the responsibility for the consequences that come as a result of that belong on you. That is a fundamental component of our society and the concept of liberty. I hope as you go forward, you take the lessons you've been learning and make the right choices and don't end up as one of my criminal clients. Thanks for that question.
The next question will be presented by Avery for Peter Welch.
Hi. My dream is to follow a career that would require many years of college. I see that one of your values is affordable education. What steps will you take to ensure that all can get the years of schooling they need and remain financially stable?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, go to school, go to higher education, or get training. That is really important. But there's something that the colleges can do, there's something the government can do, and there's something that you can do. Number one, on colleges, they've got to stop raising the tuition so much. It just goes up and up and up. And I'm glad to say the University of Vermont and the Vermont State Colleges have pledged to keep tuition level for a period of time. So keep those costs down. We got to demand that our colleges do more to keep that in line. Second, government can make loans, but they ought to be at low interest rates so you're not getting hammered with these very high interest rates. And for a long time, government was borrowing money at 2%, and then parents and kids were having to pay loans at 7%. You know, you do the math, that's wicked. And then third, there's something you can do. Do work study, and we've got to make work study available. Or when you graduate and have a loan, you can get into a loan forgiveness program if you do some public service. Be a librarian, be a police officer, firefighter, be a teacher. So those are the things, all with everyone, the colleges, the government, and you. So let's make it affordable so you have that option and don't graduate with a mountain of debt. Thank you.
That's the end of round two. To start round three, the question will be presented by Maya for Phil Scott, and stepping in is Tori Biandolio.
I know that you spent $40 million in new funding for weatherization, electric vehicle infrastructure, and purchasing incentives. How are you monitoring the success of these monies spent? And what action will you take to reach your goal of protecting Vermont's environment? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Maya. And I just want to say thank you to all of you and your generation, because you have been some of the loudest activists on this issue, and having people in this room and across the country actually listen to your voice and echo the statement that we owe it to you to make sure we leave this planet in a better place for you. So to that aim, what the administration is focused on is the two biggest areas that cause our carbon emissions. So that's transportation and home heating, so weatherization. And so with the over $240 million invested in climate change, we've focused on those two issues. We track that by number of EVs on the road, number of houses weatherized, and also overall carbon emissions. That's the single largest investment in climate change in the history of Vermont, and we hope to continue on this progress. But we also recognize we're not alone, right? China still emits a lot, and different states still emit a lot, and so we've also invested in making our communities more climate resilient. resilient, which means protecting us and your communities from adverse weather effects, because we understand that we need to do our part here in Vermont, but we also need to protect you from folks who are not doing their part around the country and still advocate for this around the country. Thanks.
The next question will be presented by Zephyr for Charity Clark.
How does requiring anti-bias training for criminal justice change Vermont for the better? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, and I want to applaud all of you who are participating in this, stepping up to the microphone. It's not easy, as everyone on the stage, I think, has experienced before. Sometimes you don't want to step up to the microphone on a stage, and you're doing an amazing job, and I just want to applaud you. So in answer to this question, I want to give a little backstory on a process that Vermont underwent over the past few years with a group of stakeholders on this topic, and a working group that had several recommendations at the end of it. The working group was tasked with trying to figure out ways that we can reduce racial disparities in our criminal justice system. And one of the recommendations was this, that we required judges and folks in the criminal justice system to undergo bias training. I want to emphasize implicit bias training. We all have bias, but when you're not aware that it is there, it becomes a much bigger problem, because how can you do better? How can you improve? So I believe that that recommendation should be put in place. It's really important that we have a criminal justice system that's fair to all. And as Attorney General, I will look forward to working with other working groups and stakeholder groups to resolve problems like that one. My leadership style is very collaborative. We're really lucky to be in Vermont, where that is kind of an ethos that we have here of working together and solving problems together. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Avery for Gerald Malloy.
Hi. Affordable health care for all is something I value. On your website, Deploy Malloy, you mentioned you want to reduce health care costs. How do you plan on accomplishing this goal?
Avery, great question. Thank you, and thank you for mentioning my website. But so, again, getting back to what I mentioned earlier, a couple of different approaches is more and more government involvement and subsidies and incentives and control. I'm of the view of less government involvement and let the open market take its course and drive competition. I do think that is the way to lower costs, and of course, like all of us, I do value affordable health care. A couple of specific reasons, things to look at there are for the government is to increase transparency so that consumers know what they're going to be charged beforehand. The right to try, I support that, and of course maybe implementing the option to be able to buy insurance across state lines. Another area, I've actually talked with some healthcare industry executives, and one area that might be tough to tackle, but we could look at is patents, and that, like for instance, a drug patent, how long that is. That might drive healthcare costs down significantly. So those are some of the things. But to answer your question, open market and drive competition, you see it all the time when you go shopping, even getting gas, across the street is $2 a gallon, here it's $4 a gallon. I'm going to go over here, get the $2 a gallon gas. So that's what I look to do for the healthcare industry, to lower costs. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Thor for Becca Ballant.
Hello, Becca. As of February 2021, only 16.2% of Vermonters who had signs of anxiety/depression were receiving mental health services. Many Vermonters need mental health services but are unavailable or have long wait lists. If elected, how will you improve mental health or care in our state?
Thank you for the question, Thor. It's something that's incredibly important to me as a parent, as a former teacher, as a legislator. We do not have enough providers here in the state to meet the need, and we have increasing levels of anxiety and depression, especially among young people and teens. The pandemic has taken a terrible toll. This is something that I will be fighting very hard for at the federal level, to get more funding to train more counselors and therapists and to put more of those embedded into schools. But what I really want you to know is that it was right around your age, between 6th and 8th grade when I first started to realize that I struggled from anxiety and depression. And we didn't really have the language in my family to talk about it. We didn't talk about it at all at school. And it really wasn't until I was in high school when I went to see a school counselor, because I got to a really, really low place. And I said, I need help. I don't know how to get that help. And I need you to help me navigate the system. I wish that we had had more honest conversations in middle school about what I was experiencing, because for years I felt like there was something wrong with me, and not that it was just a natural part of being human, that we go through these tough cycles of emotional struggles. And so what I want to say to you, if you right now are struggling with anxiety or depression, there's nothing wrong with you. You haven't done anything wrong. Please talk to an adult in your life that you feel comfortable with, or a peer, and get some help. And that can even just be somebody that you trust close to you who can help guide you. But this is going to be an issue that I will be fighting very, very hard for on the federal level. So thank you, Thor. Great question.
The next question will be presented by Olivia for Michael Taglavia.
As of 2022, there have been 278 reports of rape in Vermont. On your website, you say you are a Right to Life supporter. What if one of these victims becomes pregnant by their assaulter? Do you think it is fair to force people with uteruses to give birth? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Shorter answer is no. I don't believe in adding insult to injury. I think it would be a decision for the person who was raped, with their family and with their doctor. It's going to be a very difficult decision, and I don't see me stepping in there as being helpful. That doesn't change my right to life support, but thankfully, I think in this country, that's a very small percentage, but I don't want to add insult to injury, so I could not support forcing someone to give birth under those considerations. So that's a tough enough decision. I don't need to be there.
Next question will be presented by Emmeline for David Zuckerman.
One of my top values is having a sense of belonging. I looked on your website and I didn't see anything about building stronger communities. How do you plan on building stronger communities?
Thank you. I think there are numerous ways to build stronger communities, and some of that is through leadership and how one treats your neighbors, your political adversaries, your colleagues at work that you disagree with. How we carry ourselves every day is how we build stronger communities. I'd also say my support, unwavering support for marriage equality, was about building a stronger community by saying everyone is welcome and everyone is to be treated equally. I believe in building stronger communities means saying we should support public safety evolution to broaden it to include mental health services and affordable housing, and making sure that every person can pick up the phone and call for law enforcement support and feel safe when that law enforcement officer comes to their door. It means supporting law enforcement and supporting communities of color who right now don't feel as they can call law enforcement and be treated fairly and equally. Having these conversations and bringing everyone to the table is how you build stronger communities. Investing in your towns and villages downtown with infrastructure so you could have more housing in your towns and villages and good broadband in your towns and villages so people can live and work in their village will build a stronger community, because not everyone will be leaving all day for work and then coming back and never seeing their neighbors as they walk to the local store. So building stronger communities is a multifaceted approach. It's how we treat people. It's how we invest our state dollars to build those infrastructures. And I just want to end by saying, when I first became lieutenant governor, Trump became president. And All Are Welcome was a sign that was was made up by students at Burlington High School. I immediately put that sign outside my door as lieutenant governor. All are welcome. Thank you.
The next question will be presented by Avery for Brenda Siegel.
What can you do to help and support our family-owned businesses in the community that are struggling with bills and getting rent on time?
So I want to start by saying that I own a small business, and I have for the last 19 years. It has been struggling or dormant since COVID, and so I understand that there's a lot of challenge right now. Our small businesses, our main streets, are really bearing the brunt of the inflationary cost, and they were already struggling before, and Vermont was getting less and less affordable before COVID. And we need to make sure that we support them in making the transitions that they have to make and that workers need right now, which is higher wages and benefits, including mandatory paid family and medical leave. And we have to support also some changes, because right now our large businesses are putting the brunt of this onto their workers by allowing the workers to be shed, and so they have more work to do when they're there. I also want to mention that I am a struggling Vermonter. I've struggled financially while I've raised my son for the last 20 years, and it is not where I expected to end up, and I've really watched the promise of opportunity slip away. And I know that there's so many of your parents that have experienced the same thing. And what we have to do right now is change our outlook so that we are supporting our main streets and our businesses, because all of us deserve to not only survive, but also thrive here in Vermont.
The next question will be presented by Orion for Joe Benning.
Hello, Joe. I noticed on your website that you value education and want to make a stronger school system. My question is, how will you go about doing that, and why is this important to you? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Ryan. You know, the office of Lieutenant Governor does not provide you with the ability to draft a bill and submit it to the legislature. But let me give you an example of something I have already done. For those of you that know, Vermont has an English motto. Anybody know what it is? Freedom and unity. About 6 years ago, a girl in 8th grade came to me and said, Mr. Benning, I know we have an English motto, but you know what? About half of the states have a Latin motto as well. And she had done her research. She told me about the coin that was made 150 years ago down in Rupert that had these words on it, Stella Quarta Decima. And she said, I would like to get that back as our Latin motto and turn it with a verb to say, may the 14th star shine bright, meaning Vermont. So the words would be, Stella Quarta Decima Fulgiat. Well, I figured here's a chance for an 8th grade student to learn about how the government process worked. And I also recognized that it probably wouldn't go anywhere past the introduction of the bill. But we did introduce the bill, and much to my surprise, the Government Operations Committee said, you know what, we like this, we're going to do it. And so that bill went from the Government Operations Committee to the Senate floor. Those are the kinds of things I can do as Lieutenant Governor, and education is extremely important in having every student like you a chance to do things like that.
The next question will be presented by Sierra for Peter Welch.
I'm concerned about how recent events have impacted reproductive rights. And you mentioned on your website that reproductive rights are under attack. How are you planning to take action to protect reproductive rights?
Well, you're very right that recent events have been very threatening to reproductive rights. Our United States Supreme Court made a catastrophic decision, the Dobbs decision. And women have enjoyed in this country constitutional protection for 50 years to make their own decisions. It's a hard decision, but it's the woman's decision. It's not a bunch of politicians, and it really shouldn't be a bunch of people on the Supreme Court. It's the decision that belongs to a woman. And I'm dismayed that our court, for the first time, took away a constitutional right rather than broadened it. What I can do here in Vermont, and what a lot of your parents can do, is vote on Proposition 5 to protect in Vermont the right of a woman to make that decision. What I did in Washington as your member of Congress is I voted for the Women's Health Protection Act that codifies Roe v. Wade and allows the woman to make the decision. That's blocked in the Senate because of the filibuster. If I'm in the Senate, I'll oppose the filibuster and I will vote to encode Women's Health Protection Act. So thank you.
That is the end of round 3. Round 4, we will give all the candidates a minute and a half to share some closing remarks. We're going to start with Charity Clark.
When I was younger than all of you, I was living in southern Vermont and I started working at my family's grocery store. And if you can picture me, this time of year, I would be in the bakery with Peggy the baker, baking my grandma's famous apple pie, which was called the Mile High Apple Pie. And I worked there from the time I was 10 until off and on, literally when I was in law school in my late 20s. I saw all kinds of people coming through my line at the checkout. And when I grew up and I became a lawyer, I took the store with me. I took all of those everyday Vermonters I saw going about their business in the grocery store in that small town with me. When I became chief of staff at the Attorney General's office 4 years ago, I really always tried to lead with those folks in mind, and my leadership was always trying to remember the everyday Vermonter. I believe that my background and experience is what the Attorney General's office needs right now at this moment in time. We are seeing global warming as the existential crisis of our time. Gun violence is gone almost virtually unchecked by Congress. Reproductive rights are on the line. We need a leader with the experience, the understanding of the office, and the knowledge of the law that I can bring. I will be ready to lead on day one. Thank you.
Gerald Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill, and thank you to everyone here at the Williston Central and all the 7th and 8th graders. Great to see you. This is a great day, and just very happy to just be a part of it. I wanted to give you a quick story. I decided to run back in November, and I will tell you, be right up front, they're very challenging at times, and I had some second thoughts along the way. And what I want to tell you is I think it's one of the very best decisions I've ever made, and for all you 7th and 8th graders, I would say just don't take counsel of your fears. You can do it. You can make a difference. So I wanted to pass that along. I am running to be your next United States Senator, and I do offer 42 years of performance and service and leadership, and I offer discipline that I think is needed to get our country back on track. This has been a great day. I believe I'm the right person to lead Vermont to a better future. And as Joe said, I'll say it not in Latin, but may the 14 stars shine bright, and may God bless America. Thank you.
Becca Ballant.
It's really, really nice to be back with all of you in middle school, because that experience of being a middle school teacher really shaped my work as a legislator. As I carry the stories of all the students I've had over the years and all of their families and the things that have been most important to them. And I was the first woman ever to be elected the president pro tem of the Vermont Senate. And I proudly served my county in Vermont for 8 years. And it's an incredible honor to represent Vermonters. And I could talk to you about all of the work that I've done on your behalf over the years, from housing investments to minimum wage increases to reducing gun violence prevention, all of those things. But the most important thing for you to know about me and what drives me is I do what I do because I love people. That is what drives me every single day. And I do the work to alleviate suffering. That has been the through line from my work as someone who served locally in my town government, to my work as a teacher, my work in the Senate, and now hopefully to represent you in Congress. It will be about bringing my love of people and my desire to alleviate suffering in all of its forms to the U.S. Congress. And I am so proud of the campaign that we ran here in Vermont. thousands and thousands of Vermonters came out and supported my campaign, and I'm so honored to sit on the stage before all of you and with all these other candidates up here today. So thanks so much for having us.
Michael Taglavia.
First, I want to thank Mr. Merrill and all the other teachers involved here, and I want to thank the students, too. This is very refreshing. You've been a tough audience, but a fair audience. On my business card, it says public safety, law and order, and personal accountability. That's how I live my life. That's what I want to bring to the office of Attorney General. I can bring a fresh perspective through my life experience to this office. I think we need a fresh perspective at this point in our history. Public safety is on everyone's mind, whether you live in a city in Vermont or a small town. Drug problems, drug crime, it's affecting everyone. I know people personally who have been infected in my small community. In my life, I have two friends who had daughters who suffered from addiction. Luckily, they recovered. I want to make sure that law and order is the rule of the day. A civil society cannot survive without the rule of law. There need to be consequences for bad choices. I don't believe we can arrest our way out of this, and that's not my intention. The rule of law is a deterrent to crime, and that's the way I plan to run the Office of Attorney General. Thank you.
David Zuckerman.
Well, thank you all for being here. Again, I've always enjoyed this forum more than every other, and in the election cycles, you always ask great questions. As someone who started a farm 25 years ago, and I've grown that to raise organic, climate-friendly food and human-friendly food, as someone who has served you for over 22 years in the legislature as well as lieutenant governor, I bring experience both in the public sector and the private sector. I recognize the major issues of the day: the climate crisis, housing, affordability in the form of wages, your fuel bills that would be lower if we had done the weatherization we should have done over the last 10 years in your homes. We need someone, and I hope you'll think I'm the one, and you'll convince your parents of that, in the lieutenant governor's office, who not only is going to lead the Senate well, but is also going to go around the state, as I have before, and work on expanding these conversations to influence the legislature. I would also happily come back to this school, as I have to many schools across the state, to talk with you not in 2-minute increments, but for an hour, so that you can get deeper on the issues. Because today you've heard very quick answers, but the reality is most of these issues are much more complex, and the answers are much deeper, and they have to be in a deeper conversation. So as Lieutenant Governor, I'm more than happy to come back to this room and other schools across the state to really get deeper into how we're going to solve these challenges for your future, my daughter's future, and your peers all across the state. So I appreciate the time today. Thank you very much.
Brenda Siegel.
My father tells stories about when I was 4 years old, keeping him awake at night, telling him about the injustice of the world, frequently homelessness. And I always say that that was my first form of advocacy, telling someone with more power than me that there was something wrong and that it needed to change. Last year, on October 14th, I stood on the State House steps and said that I would not leave until the governor fully reinstated the program that emergency housed people experiencing homelessness. I did not know that I would be there for 27 nights and 28 days. And despite my empathy on the issue, I was vastly unprepared for how quickly my body and mind would begin to decline. Right up until that last day, that 28th day, many people, I'd even say most, thought that we couldn't win, and yet we won. What I know is that you all have the opportunity to make change no matter who you are in this world. There was a time in my life when I thought that I did not have a voice, when I was so broken down that I thought no one would listen to me if I spoke up. And now I'm sitting here as your Democratic candidate for governor, knowing that in the last 6 years, Vermont has not become more affordable, that we have a housing crisis, that we have an overdose crisis. I've lost 2 family members, and that we need leadership on these issues and so many more. This is a tough race. It's not close to the toughest one I've had to face in my life, and I'm still standing, and I know that if you all join me, you'll all still be standing too. This is the work we get to do together. Thank you.
Joe Benning.
Good morning to everybody and have a great day. I want to start by thanking whoever made the poster over here with the motorcycle on it with my name attached to it. I really loved that poster, and I don't know if I can get it, but anyway, I wanted to let that person know something very important about this race. The first thing I did was I got on my motorcycle and I rode to all 251 towns in this state and had a picture taken in each town of that bike with my campaign sign on it. I wanted to be able to start this race by saying, I don't just crisscross the state, I've visited every town. I want to next thank the teachers who are here. As the son of a teacher and the husband of a teacher, I really congratulate you folks, because what you see here, you know, is something you have produced in these kids, and I think you've done a hell of a job. Lastly, I want to thank all of you for turning out here today. You've witnessed the conversations of people who may be governing your lives for a few years. In my case, I want to be in the lieutenant governor's position simply because I've been in the Senate for 12 years. I know how to work with the governor. He has endorsed me in this race, as has past Governor Jim Douglas, as well as past Lieutenant Governor Brian Doobie. The bottom line is, Phil Scott and I, if he's elected again, can work together very well, and I want to bring that to the job. Thank you very much for coming today.
Peter Welch. Thank you very much. You know, you all are busy, and you've got a lot going on. You're trying to be a good student. You're trying to be a good friend. You're trying to figure out your own emotions. You're navigating things at home. And you're asking questions and trying to figure out answers. That's not just the life of middle school kids. That's life. All of us up here are really doing the same thing. You ask questions today, and it's important that we give you the best answers we can. But life is not about having an answer to the question at the moment. Life is making a decision that you're committed to a cause. And each of us has to decide, what cause are we committed to? You know, back in college, I got involved in civil rights. That commitment to that cause has stayed with me throughout my life. We all have to make a decision. Are we going to be committed to improving the environment? That's not an answer to a question. That's a lifelong commitment to a cause. So what each of us has in common is the capacity to make that decision for ourselves about what we are committed to. And it's a tough thing to figure out, and we've got to do it together. So thank you very much.
Students and faculty of Williston and distinguished candidates, this has been an exceptionally educational and informative forum. On behalf of Williston Central School and the Humanities Committee, we wish all of the candidates the best in their campaigns, and we again present our most sincere gratitude to all of the candidates for sharing their time and expertise with us here today. Let us once again show our appreciation by standing and presenting a final rousing round of applause. Thank you, candidates. We hope to see you in 2024.